Adventure tourism has grown rapidly in recent years as outdoor recreation and has become increasingly commercial from individual handcrafted experiences.
Global adventure travel company. Actually, it's a global education company, and they also do travel, and now they do adventure travel. And so we work together with them and then a university in the Netherlands to come up with great survey work to understand how the market is.
ATTA represents a diverse range of members. They are small to medium operators to national tourism boards even. So how do you balance commercial interests with ethical imperatives like sustainability and community ownership? How do you build that in your programs? What is ATTA doing in that regard?
Reality is that a lot of our members were already oriented that direction because they're naturally at that front, that cutting edge of working with local people and also, really immersing into nature.
Mm-hmm.
So they really have always had a vested interest in protecting those, in making sure that those are healthy and taken care of.
I want to know your wildest and most memorable adventure trip.
I love the way you asked that, because many people will ask, what is the best? And there is no best. But the wildest and most interesting for me was my first time. I've been twice to Kurdistan in northern Iraq.
Anticipating or envisioning how this adventure travel experience will look like.
I think that the whole concept of influencers is what drives mass tourism towards few locations and overwhelms, and that seems to continue to happen. And AI will make that even easier. Tell me the coolest place I can be in Karachi, the coolest restaurant, or the most hip restaurant in Karachi. My pleasure, and I really hope to see you in person in Pakistan at some point.
Inshallah, sure, we'll meet. Inshallah. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to take you on a brief journey, not through jungles or across mountain peaks, but through time. Long before adventure travel had an industry, an itinerary, or an Instagram hashtag, it began as a human instinct. Thousands of years ago, early humans crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and sailed unknown waters, driven not by leisure but by survival, curiosity, and courage. Fast forward to the 14th and 15th centuries. I'm mentioning these centuries because these were the centuries of discovery, a time when explorers across continents were pushing the edges of the known world. From Ibn Battuta, who journeyed across Africa, Asia, and the Islamic world, to Magellan, Vasco da Gama, and Columbus, these early adventurers set out not knowing what lay ahead. Only then they had to go. Their journeys were absolutely risky, driven by trade, knowledge, and the call of the unknown. It was the original form of adventure tourism long before the term even existed. Then came the mountaineers, the naturalists, and the explorers of the 18th and 19th centuries, climbing Mont Blanc, mapping the Amazon, and traversing Antarctica. These weren't tourists yet. They were seekers of knowledge, thrill, and the sublime. But something changed in the 20th century. After air travel began, adventure became accessible not just for the elite, but for everyday people. People who longed to hike through Patagonia, dive in the Red Sea, scale the Karakoram and Himalayan ranges, snowboard down alpine slopes, or even motorbike the Silk Road. And now that brings us to Adventure Travel Trade Association, abbreviated as ATTA, the world's largest and most influential global association dedicated exclusively to adventure travel. It brings together a wide network of tour operators, accommodations, governments, and destination organizations. As a collaborative ecosystem, ATTA strives to understand, develop, promote good adventure tourism, travel that protects the environment, honors diverse cultures and their people, and supports economic prosperity for local communities. Shannon, a very warm welcome to PTM Podcast. Where are you joining us from today?
Thank you so much, Adeeba. I am coming from Colorado, right high in the Rocky Mountains in the center of the state, the southern center of the state. So very, very happy to be here. It's an honor to be asked, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about Pakistan Travel Mart.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Uh, Adventure tourism has grown rapidly in recent years as outdoor recreation and has become increasingly commercial from individual handcrafted experiences. I was just doing the survey and found some figures, some really strong figures, like a report by Allied Market Research states that the global adventure tourism market size is projected to reach 2 trillion by 2032, 2 trillion US dollars, growing at a compound aggregate growth rate of 19.5% from 2023 to 2032, just a decade gap. So I want to understand from your vantage point at ATTA, what have been the most significant shifts in the adventure travel space during this time, whether in traveler behavior, destinations, or industry priorities?
Absolutely. And I loved your intro coming back to centuries ago and imagining those early explorers and expeditions and the certainly the world was an incredibly risky place back then. And it was a special breed of person that was going out and exploring the world and doing this adventurous travel. And fast forward to the modern era, and it's a in some ways there's some hints of the past, but that's also a completely different set of experiences now. And even in the I've been in my role for about 20 years, and even in that period of time, I've witnessed both anecdotally and also through the data, because we do surveys every year. I've noticed some big shifts, and in fact, we're just about to announce one of our latest studies, which is a global market sizing for the adventure travel industry, which we've never done before. And that was in partnership with EF Adventures, and that's a global adventure travel company. Actually, it's a global education company, and they also do travel, and now they do adventure travel. And so we work together with them, and then a university in the Netherlands to come up with great survey work to understand how the market is. But I'll start with 20, 30 years ago,
Yes.
when modern adventure travel really sort of found its wheels and started to become a real thing. And I would say in the early days, it really was characterized more by the hints of the past, of somewhat extreme, somewhat risky, generally young people going to far-flung places from wherever they live and exploring the world. And that has morphed into a real industry. And the traveler has also changed over time. When I think back to the beginnings of commercial travel, if you look 60, 70 years ago, where it really became a global thing because airline flights and all of that, I think the mentality then was so different. It was about conquering. It was about checking lists and saying, I've been to this and I've been to this. And, really from the vantage point of today's traveler, a very shallow view of how the world worked. And I would say probably very much a lot of colonial mindsets, a lot of, we're the people with the money, so we get to do what we want wherever we go. That has changed so much, that now the culture and the way that, and I'll just speak for adventure travel because that's my expertise, but it's so different now, that the the way that we have been defining adventure travel for the last almost 20 years, and we built this on traveler research, is it's comprised of three main characteristics: nature, culture, and activity. And so we almost viewed it like a dartboard that you throw a dart at, that red bullseye in the center. A trip would incorporate all three of those aspects. So you've got the nature part, the culture part, and the activity part. So once you get one ring out and only have two of those aspects, it's still adventure travel, but it's just a little further out. And you can imagine it as sort of a gradation of, is it adventure or not? And when I started with ATTA, we would classify things as adventure travel or not adventure travel, which was a very crude definition. And that's where we went to the three pillars. And then after that, we went even deeper and studied the travelers to find out, what are their motivations for traveling? What's interesting to them? Is it experience? Is it the ability to tell their friends what they did, sort of bragging rights? Is it transformation? Is it a challenge? Is it wellness? And we found that there was a little bit of all of those things. And so what also happened over time is that as the market got more sophisticated and mature, people wanted new experiences. They wanted to go deeper than they did before. And again, comparing this to the traveler of 50 years ago who, went probably in a fairly big group in somewhat of a bubble, somewhat protected from truly experiencing local cultures. And that's just completely, that is a thing of the past now. And so
you're trying to make a point here that commercial growth has actually changed the spirit of adventure travel in a positive way. It has enhanced it, right?
I think so. And I think that's partly also just the traveler is changing. We have so much information at our fingertips that wasn't available 30 years ago, that information is less interesting now. And now it's more about in-person really experiencing a place. And, most people who have traveled a lot have probably done a bit of both, where on one side, they've maybe have been to all-inclusive resorts or big cruise ships that really insulate you from the local culture, where you really don't get that. You get little hints of the culture, but you're not experiencing it. And that's where I think adventure travel has really taken, why it has grown so rapidly is people want more now. They really want to feel like they are able to learn something on their trips. And so even in my relatively, for the span of tourism, my short career, in the last 20 years, I've watched it change wildly. And culture, I would argue, has become really the most important part, and that the activity is actually in many cases secondary. And it's not that it doesn't matter, but many years ago, people would sign up for a 20-day trekking experience, and you can still do that in lots of places, including Pakistan. But now the traveler is getting more and more nuanced, where they maybe want to take a cooking class, and maybe I want to cycle for 3 or 4 days and then hike for a few days. And then I would love to meet villagers in a remote village and see how life works in this location. And so it's gotten, I think, a lot more intelligent, a lot more thoughtful, and
a lot more immersive with the environment, right?
That's exactly it. And one of the things that and we can talk about the top line revenue numbers and how those are growing and how adventure travel is expanding and growing all the time, but I think one of the most important subpoints to that is that adventure travelers genuinely want to experience what is real and local and authentic. And so what that means is, instead of
I would like to ask like this question, because you see in this world with so much saturated with so much saturation and a lot of information and like hashtags like bucket lists and Instagram moments, still, how do you define a true authentic adventure experience today in this so much noise? How do you define a true, authentic adventure experience?
Well, I think within the framework of those three principles of nature, culture, activity,
Hmm.
I think really doing the investigation of a tour operator to say, on this trip, I read through the itinerary. It looks very interesting. Will I be able to actually interact with local people? Will I be staying in a local hotel or in local accommodations of some sort? Are my guides local?
Hmm.
What's the food experience going to be like? Because I don't want to eat McDonald's. I'm leaving that culture behind that I live in because I want to experience the real deal. And so I think now there's thousands and thousands of tour operators offering exactly that, those very authentic experiences, and you can kind of decide how deep you want to go. Some go as deep as having homestays, where
Right.
instead of staying in a hotel at night, you're staying with a family.
Hmm.
And in fact, my wife and I did this in Fiji this last year, and I was on a tour that did a small eco lodges, but
Okay.
she was in one where they stayed in the village, and she said I slept on the floor in a room with 10 other people, and the
Right.
kids, get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and it was a very, very authentic experience.
Right.
And then on the other end, there was a lodge that one of our groups stayed in,
Hmm.
called Nukabati in Fiji, that is 5 star is not even describing how gorgeous and luxurious it is, but it's also very focused on eco and sustainability. So adventure travel doesn't have to mean sleeping on the floor in a communal building.
Hmm.
It could be a 5 star, eco resort as well. But those three elements of nature, culture, and activity are still really, really important.
Actually, this is the bottom line that you have mentioned. Usually, people do confuse the concept of adventure tourism as someone living a nomadic life. Like,
Hmm.
you have to become a nomad, you have to grow your hair, you have to become, you don't need to shave your yourself. So
Right.
this is like a myth that you have just debunked right now, that you can even be in a five-star resort and still call it an adventure tourism experience, provided it is hitting all those three components that you have enlisted, that is people, culture, and environment, right?
Yes, nature, culture, and activity. Yep, exactly.
Activity. Activity.
Yeah. No,
Right.
that is exactly it. And part of the beauty of that is I think that the definition of adventure travel, at least in many people in their minds, say 30 years ago, is it was very exclusive. You know,
Hmm.
you had to be young, you had to be fit, you had to be adventurous, you had to be willing
Yes.
to suffer. But why should not anybody have why everybody should have access to adventure?
Right.
And so my
Right.
mother, my 81-year-old mother, flew to Thailand by herself last
Okay.
December to
Right.
meet my brother who lives there, and she went and did village visits with my brother and to the coffee farms, and they it was an incredible adventure. So it is not only for a specific group of people, everybody. And now the accessibility, like there's organizations, there's companies
Hmm.
who are focused on disability accessibility. So people that take companies that take people in wheelchairs on rafting trips,
Right. Right.
or cycling, with specially made cycles up into, high mountain areas. And I, to me, that's the most beautiful thing, because there's nothing like a true adventure of connecting with nature, having your worldview shifted by meeting somebody from another culture, and then doing that all in some sort of active way so you're staying healthy. I,
Right.
I, I genuinely believe it's one of the most positive forces on the planet.
Now, I would like to ask a very important question. Like, ATTA represents a diverse range of members. They are small to medium operators to national tourism boards, even. So, how do you balance commercial interests with ethical imperatives like sustainability and community ownership? How do you build that in your programs? What is ATTA doing in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the reality is that a lot of our members were already oriented that direction because they're naturally at that front, that cutting edge of being working with local people and also, you know, really immersing into nature.
Hmm.
So they really have always had a vested interest in
Okay.
protecting those, in making sure that those are healthy and taken care of. So we're fortunate in that the vast majority of our industry is already mentally oriented towards sustainability, towards involvement of locals. And even that, the second thing there, the involvement of locals. There's such a wide variety, right? You have everything from locals in Venice who are being completely overrun by tourism, and the culture is being squashed and dissipated and almost eliminated from what culture was in Venice 100 years ago. That's simply a volume and management problem. The reality is that most of the members of ours who do adventure travel, it's small groups, it's very curated. If they're being responsible, not only do they have permission to work with local villages or local tribes or local people groups, but they've involved them in such a way that it's very beneficial for them instead of just exploitative. Because, you know, if we're honest, tourism can be very exploitative in its worst forms, and that's why I love the adventure travel community and the industry, because it matters to them.
Yes, like just you mentioned about over tourism, mismanagement problem, like new problems are being introduced in the market, like artificial intelligence, climate change is one of them. These are not theoretical concepts anymore. So I want to understand uh, what is ATTA's concrete plan to navigate this decade of
Yeah.
disruption, because it is very sensitive.
Yeah. Well, I can hit those two for sure. Those are very two big subjects, tip of the iceberg subjects. And you know, as far as climate, you know, we see travel as being one of the larger contributors to carbon in the global sphere of how the world works. And so what we've done at the ATTA is we created an initiative called Tomorrow's Air, and
Okay.
it's a specific organization that is able to work with tour operators primarily, and the focus is on cutting edge technologies to recapture carbon and sequester it. And so in our early days in climate action, we partnered with an organization to offer carbon offsets, but we came to the conclusion that it wasn't enough, and that there wasn't going to be enough carbon offsetting to solve the problems that we're facing with climate. And so we decided to make a philosophical decision to dive into carbon capture. And so the criticism of what we're doing is that it's more expensive than carbon offsetting, and so you don't get as much. But our view on it is a long-term view, which would be similar, we hope, in the to the evolution of solar.
So how has been this program received by the industry people, the tour operators, basically?
You know, a lot of them love it. A lot of them are still learning how it works because it's a
Okay.
more complicated version than offset. Um, and and we're actually looking at partnering with some other big carbon focused or carbon reduction focused organizations to see if we can take that impact farther. But as far as how our community has received it, they love it. They may not, some may not fully understand it because it is very complex, and some will look at it and weigh it and say, I can get more bang for my buck with carbon offsets. And our philosophy is yes, and we need to do everything at this point. So if you want to do carbon offsets, go for it. We're going to focus on carbon capture and storage. That's going to be what Tomorrow's Air is known for. And so we work with a lot of different tour operators on that, and they do everything from, they require a fee from each customer. So they say, when you pay for your $5,000 trip, $100 is going towards tomorrow's air. That's on one end. On the other end, there are operators who are saying it's optional. If you would like to purchase some carbon sequestering credits, then you can do that.
Okay.
And we launched it, and then COVID hit, and so we sort of had to hibernate it and keep it alive for about 4 years. And so really, it was just a year and a half, 2 years ago that we got to kick back into gear. So I think we're just coming into our own with that. So that's climate.
Yeah, please do hold on to it. It's a fascinating and impactful program. And communities, I'm very hopeful communities would like to play their part and would contribute in it in the monetary terms as well. Because I think communities are now more sensitive to what is happening around from the environmental perspective. So now let's do a paradigm shift here, and let's bring travelers' role in focus. What do you believe adventure travelers themselves need to unlearn or relearn about their role? Not just as consumers of experiences, but as participants in the well-being of the places they really visit. They don't love it to a limit that it dies. So I want to know, how should they take care of the places they visit, their role as well.
Well, I'll speak from the perspective of adventure travelers that are working with tour operators that are versus the solo traveler that's just doing it on their own. You know, that's a market that we don't really we don't study. We're focused on the commercial adventure travel side. You know, I always tell people, travelers, when they ask, you know, what can I do to be a better traveler? I always say, do intensive research on the tour operator you're considering working with, and ask questions of them that are very strategic. Don't ask, are you green? Are you responsible?
Right.
Do you work with communities? Instead, say, tell me about your sustainability and responsibility efforts.
How much have they invested actually in sustainability?
I think if an operator can't answer that super clearly and say, we have this carbon program, you know, we are converting our fleet to electric vehicles or biofuel, we're finding ways to reduce our carbon footprint. Anybody that's doing that work should easily be able to share it and have it make sense even to the layperson who's that's not their world. And similarly with communities, instead of saying, do you work with communities, tell me how you work with communities, and have the operator answer that. And if the operator hems and haws and can't really answer the question, that's a little bit suspicious. They should be able to say, well, 75% of our workforce are local. You know, the other, 20% are from our same country, but from the big city. We fund a school that is in our local area. There's a medical operation that we donate to. Like that, they should be able to easily say, this is how we integrate with our community, and our community has given us permission to be here. So I'll give you a beautiful example in a part of the tourism industry that is often, in my view, not beautiful, which is big ship cruising, which can be really exploitative of small destinations. One of the cruise companies, Hurtigruten, that's a Norwegian company. At one point, they were wanting to add routes to their itineraries or to their offering, and they wanted to stop in these little villages along the fjords. But they literally sent a team in to each one of those and said, here's what we would like to do, but if you don't want us to come, we're not going to come. If we do come, we would love to buy local food and produce from you, local products. And so in the matter of a few years of that work, Hurtigruten has eliminated 80% of commercial food from their ships. And they are picking that food up in the communities along the way where they stopped, that they had permission from that community. And to me, that is a beautiful way to manage tourism, because then the locals aren't just being used. They have a
Mhm.
say. They have a say in the process, and it can be a business opportunity for them.
That was actually my one of the questions, that what's one destination that gets adventure tourism just right? And you just mentioned the example of the cruise that is doing adventure tourism right by bringing in the community and offering the food from farm to the table. So
Yes.
yeah. So besides that cruise example, do you think there is any destination that really gets adventure tourism perfectly?
Um, I'm probably going to make some people upset or unhappy with this, but no, I don't think there's any. If you look at a country level,
Okay.
countries are too complex for that. There's
Okay.
just too many interests, too many things going on. When I think of destinations that are getting it done really right, it tends to be somewhat specific.
Okay.
So for example, there's a place called Bonito, Brazil,
Okay.
and they have this one of their one of the landmark tourism experiences there is this incredible crystalline clear river with amazing marine, or fish life, and then it's surrounded by jungle. So you've got jungle plus this gorgeous river, and you snorkel in the river, and so you see the wildlife,
Okay.
you hear the
Hmm.
wildlife, you see the fish,
Hmm.
and they have done an amazing job of coordinating between the government and the private sector, and
Okay.
so they basically set it up so it's very strictly managed. So and I've done this trip twice,
Okay.
and both times it was the same way.
Hmm.
We came in as a group. You have to shower to get all product out of your hair and off your skin. No sunscreen, no hair, and then
Okay.
you get your snorkeling equipment on,
Hmm.
and you go with a guide, and it's timed, and the guide says, okay, it's time for us to walk through the jungle, and
Hmm.
they explain how everything works, the trees and the ecosystem and the animals, and then you get to the spot in the river, and you do your snorkeling trip, and you never see another group. But the truth is, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people going down that river every day, but because they've managed it so well, both from a cleanliness, sustainability standpoint, but also keeping the groups separated so they're not seeing each other. So
Hmm.
you have this just incredible nature experience,
Hmm.
and it took the government and the local businesses to work together to do that. And so when I think of examples, that's the sort of thing I think of. I think of Hurtigruten in Norway doing an
Hmm.
amazing job working with
Hmm.
the communities. I think of,
Hmm.
there's some tour operators that do the Nakasendo Trail in Japan,
Okay.
where, you know,
What is that?
so it's an ancient trail between Tokyo and Kyoto that was
Okay.
traversed by the samurai back in the day. So it goes centuries back, but there's operators now that are, some are more adventure focused, where you're going to be doing mountain biking on the trip. Some are hiking,
Hmm.
so they're moderately active, and then there's some
Hmm.
where it's, maybe for elderly adventurers who can't walk for 10 miles a day, and so they're gonna take a bus and go to this town and experience this onsen and the food and the so there's lots and lots of there's literally thousands of great examples of small scale destination doing it right. On a country level, it's there's so much going on, and especially the bigger and more complex, like Pakistan, India, the US, Brazil. These are destinations with everything from really, tourism that maybe isn't the best for the place, to really, really great tourism that's being done right. So our encouragement is not to shame or blame. Our belief is you just continue to say, there's a better way to do tourism. Let's do it together. Everybody's in progress.
Yeah.
No one's doing it perfectly. So let's encourage each other. And that's what our whole community is about.
Yes, yes. We should be moving forward with hope, even in these chaotic times. We'll figure it
Yes,
out, right? So,
absolutely.
yeah. So, I want to know your wildest and most memorable adventure trip.
I love the way you asked that, because many people will ask, what is the best? And there is no best. but the wildest and most interesting for me was my first time. I've been twice to Kurdistan in
Okay.
northern Iraq,
Okay.
and I went because I had an uncle who was very connected to the Kurdish community where he
Okay.
lived. And as a little kid, I remember these guys with big mustaches, and they looked so different than anybody that I grew up knowing. And
Mm-hmm.
yet all these men were smoking cigarettes and sitting on my uncle's porch and talking. And I just got super intrigued. And we put on an event, or no, actually, I attended an event in Amman, Jordan.
Okay.
And then I looked at the map. This is in 2009, so it's been a while. I looked
Hmm.
at the map and went, well, there's Kurdistan. It's a 2-hour flight.
Hmm.
And so I managed to hunt down the tourism ministry and said, hey, if I can get myself there, will you show me around? I want to see Kurdistan. And they said,
Hmm.
well, yeah, sure, show up. And so I sent them my itinerary, and I spent
Okay.
just over a week touring
Hmm.
around Kurdistan, and it just blew my mind. I
Really.
loved how there were no Western brands. There was
Hmm.
no Starbucks, no McDonald's, none of that. It was Kurdistan. To the point where at one point a woman beckoned us from a tent and invited us and said, we would like to kill a goat and
Okay.
have you stay the day, and we'll
Hmm.
cook the goat and we'll drink tea and talk. And we weren't, unfortunately, our the gentleman that had our itinerary said we can't do it because of we have to be at this place by tonight. But just that, I'll never forget that offer. And how many people warmly, as an American, I honestly expected some hostility towards me. I was a
Hmm.
little bit worried
Hmm.
because the U.S. government, has not always been a good friend of many places in the world, including Kurdistan.
Yeah.
But my experience was completely opposite. I walked out of there with such a full heart, and I think I drank 300 glasses of tea with strangers. It was just, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And
Did you continue sipping that tea afterwards, even
oh
in love of
yes,
Kurdistan, in memory of Kurdistan?
that's right, that's right. And then I took my 16-year-old son there in 2017.
Okay.
And my son is now, he's on a mission. He's a lawyer, but he's
Okay.
on a mission to make the world a better place. And he said part of it is the travel that we did. I got exposed to the killing fields in Cambodia, and
Hmm.
to the realities of the Kurds under Saddam's reign. And so my son has developed this desire and this heart to serve the world. And a big reason is we went on a trip that didn't hold us up in an all-inclusive resort where we don't learn anything and we just eat too much and lay on the beach. And so
Absolutely.
I love those trips are super, super special.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting epic that you have shared from your most memorable adventure trips. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
Moving
course.
forward, one trend you hope disappears, and one you hope explodes in the next 5 years. What would be that?
Boy, that's a great question. I actually like not getting the questions in advance because then you get a more real answer. One trend that I hope stops. I
Yeah.
hope, I would like to see mass tourism diminish over time.
Hmm.
I think there's a place for it, and to pretend that somehow we're going to tell people they shouldn't go somewhere so they won't. It's just not going to happen. If people
Hmm.
want to see the Mona Lisa, they're going to do it. And so there is a place for mass tourism, but I guess the thing that I would like to see sort of disappear is being so addicted to the brand names, like the iconic travel places of the world. People are still
Hmm.
just stuck on going to the same places everyone goes. And
Hmm.
so I would love to see that sort of dwindle over time, that and just think more broadly. Like, for example, we did a project with Peru where we took travel buyers and travel media to Peru. We had two
Mm-hmm.
separate groups, and neither one went to Machu Picchu.
Okay.
They went other places in Peru because Peru is saying, look, Machu Picchu sells itself. There's already so many people
Mm-hmm.
coming to it. Here's these other amazing places that we have within Peru. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And then what would I like to see more of? I would love to see a trend of travelers genuinely interested in being more responsible with their travel. You know, there's been lots of surveys over the years that show that there's a gap between people's intent and actually what they do. So they say, yes, I would like a more sustainable trip. Oh, okay, that'll cost 10% more. Oh, never mind. So I would love to see more and more travelers say, hey, I'm willing to pay, an X% surcharge to cover my carbon for this flight. I would love to see travelers say, I would like to go to more remote places in smaller groups with
I think
responsible
it
fuel.
is happening. It is
It
happening.
is.
It has begun.
I totally agree.
Yes.
And I think the role of AI is still, I mean, we had a session in our conference in Denver about 3 months ago about AI, and the experts in AI in travel are still saying, we don't know exactly where this is going because it is such a massive shift and the technology is exploding so rapidly. It's very, very hard to predict. Where's it going to go? Um, I do think that adventure travel is also an antidote to the overstimulation of never-ending digital flow into our lives. And so I love the idea that maybe more and more places more operators and accommodations will say, hey, we're doing digital detox. Come here and shut your phone off for a week and
Exactly.
actually watch a wild tiger or snorkel with these amazing octopi and you're going to put away your phone and we'll have an official photographer on the trip so that you're not all photographing the same person in a village and making them feel uncomfortable. I was on a trip like that once where I was with a group of travel professionals in Bhutan, and we realized that every time we stopped, we all got out of the bus and we all took pictures of the same thing or the same
Yes.
person, and it started to feel a little disrespectful.
Yes.
So on the bus, we're like, hey, how about if we agree one person takes the photos with permission
Yes. Yes.
and then we share them? I mean, do we all really need 500 of our own photos? So I think
Exactly.
just rethinking how we are when we travel around the world and being respectful.
Yes. Yes. That's very important. Let's wrap up our session and let's conclude it. Uh, Anticipating or envisioning how this adventure travel experience will look like in the immediate future, let's say 5 to 10 years. How do you see it? Will it be more immersive, or in the chaos of AI and over digitalization, would it become manufactured? How hopeful you are?
That's a great question. I think that both will be true. I think that the whole concept of influencers is what drives mass tourism towards few locations and overwhelms, and that seems to continue to happen. And AI will make that even easier. Tell me the coolest place I can be in Karachi, the coolest restaurant, or the most hip restaurant in Karachi. Um, and then there will be the adventure travelers who say, and I'll give you an example if that's okay. My
Yes.
son and I were in Wadi Rum in Jordan, and
Okay.
the guide was driving us to all the main sites in Wadi Rum, which were full of tourists from other destinations. And I finally told the driver, said, do you know some quiet places? I'm sure you,
Is it the place where Petra is located? Wadi
it's
Rum?
very close to Wadi Rum. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Similar environment.
Okay.
And so we asked the guide, can we go to quieter places? And he said, yeah, but they're not the famous ones. And we said, we don't care about the famous at all. We want to experience the quietness and the beauty of Wadi Rum. And the driver seemed excited. He's like, yeah, I'll show you my personal spots.
Okay.
And so my son and I got to go and then experience Wadi Rum alone.
Okay.
And so I think it will probably go both directions. I think that the overrun places will continue to be overrun and overvisited. And I understand, you think about things like the pyramids, the Taj Mahal, Petra, Machu Picchu, all these, the Christ the Redentor in Rio de Janeiro. Those will always be iconic. Those will always pull lots of people. I think our industry is going to provide the alternative, though, the quieter, the more unique, the more immersive. And to me, I would rather do that any day than be shoulder to shoulder with so many people not really having a great experience anyway, because you can't get that close to it. So I believe in adventure travel has the power to heal. It gives you the ability to slow down, to listen to the world, to meet somebody very different than yourself, and hear what their challenges are, what they're excited about. When we came back from Kurdistan, I asked my son, what stands out to you? Just tell me what stood out to you. And I'm expecting him to talk about some pretty epic things that we did and saw. And he said, I remember the kid in the refugee camp with perfect hair and perfect English and bright eyes saying, I want to be a biologist someday.
Okay.
That almost made me cry. Like my son.
That human connection, right?
Yeah, he cared about the right thing. It didn't matter if we saw some incredible mountains or, that's all good. But no, he remembered that boy that was about his age, and he was just struck by this kid was in a really rough situation, but he had hopes and dreams, and his eyes were bright. To me, that's the most important thing about travel is humanity, being kind, being respectful.
Yes, and I think adventure tourism needs to have humanity component as well. Like as you mentioned about this photographing session, not to be disrespectful to somebody by bombarding them with the photos.
Right.
So that is also being very conscious of the people whom you're visiting and the places that you're visiting. Thank you so much, Shannon. It has been a real pleasure talking to you. I myself have learned a lot from today's discussion. Very hopeful about the adventure tourism industry, its growth, and its evolution into becoming a more resilient and responsible agent, if I put it like this. Thank you so much for being with me today
It's
in
my
PTM Podcast.
pleasure. My pleasure. And I really hope to see you in person in Pakistan at some point.
Inshallah. Sure, we'll meet. Inshallah. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.